If you are struggling with substance abuse and addiction, please call the National Drug Hotline at 844-289-0879. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please call 988. Someone will listen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of the Wrestling Archives podcast. I'm your co-host, Tim Hackman.
And I'm Rich Sigwald.
Thanks for being with us. We're excited to be with you. We got an extra special guest this evening. We hope you caught our recent episodes. We talked about a SummerSlam and Bret Hart versus Davey Boy. That was a phenomenal show, so we hope you go back and take a listen to that one. Watch that show if you haven't seen it in a while. We've got a lot of course, always more fun stuff coming up. We're hoping to connect with our friends in Virginia Championship Wrestling again and feature some of their folks. Talk a little bit about what they've got going on. But today we've got a super special guest. We're super hype about it. He's worked for Chikara. He's done Spanish commentating for AEW and WWE. He currently works for Major League Wrestling and runs the Three Legacies Wrestling Academy in Lancaster, PA. I'm a Pennsylvania boy myself, so we could talk a little bit about that. He's obviously probably most famous for being the personal valet and ring announcer for former WWE and World Heavyweight Champion Alberto del Rio, or El Patrón, you may remember. And so we are so pleased to welcome to the show Ricardo Rodriguez. Welcome.
Hola, buenas tardes. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. No, man, I'm happy to be here. It's wild sometimes when I think about my resume until somebody else mentions it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. You got quite the CV. So, and Jesus said, "Buenas tardes." He's such a busy guy. We had to jump on and record at the unprecedented hour of 10:30 in the PM. Rich has a very small child. He's usually passed out by 8:45 or so. I'm just old and drink too much, so I'm usually passed out by 9:15. But you know, this is how excited we were. I drank an extra soda just so we could stay up and chat with you. So we really appreciate it. So.
That crash, man. That crash is gonna suck in a little bit.
So if you guys, I'll try to hit the button to mute before I start snoring on my end. So just don't take it personally, okay? So we got a handful of questions, but obviously we're happy to kind of talk about wherever you want the conversation to take you. So maybe is it okay if we start at a little bit with kind of what's going on now and what you're up to these days and your wrestling school and some of the details about all that? I'm sure folks would like to be kind of in the know.
So about 2 years ago, I relocated from Cairo, Egypt to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I've been here for the last 2 years, a little over 2 years now in Lancaster, and I opened up my own pro wrestling school of Three Legacies Wrestling, which a month later turned into a promotion. So for the last a year and a half, I've been operating Three Legacies Wrestling, and it's been an amazing ride for the last year and a half, and then one that just continues to grow and continues to build. And also within that time frame of the year and a half I started working for Major League Wrestling as a producer and on-air talent. So it's been awesome. The last year and a half, 2 years, have just been nonstop go, and it's a busy time frame, but it's one that I'm loving how everything's coming along, and it's one that's gonna keep blossoming so long as we keep nurturing it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's threelegasieswrestling.com. I was checking out the site and looking at some of your talent. There's a couple folks on there we know. We've seen live. We've seen Bro Keller. Mm-hmm. He's been in and out of VCW a handful of times. He's kind of a cool dude. There's some other familiar faces on there. You guys have looks like you're running shows fairly regularly. I saw a Valentine's Day show, and
yeah, we do them every month. We have one. I'm not sure when this is gonna air. But today is Thursday. We have a show on Saturday, and we have them every month. The next one is in June 29th. and then we have another one July 13th, and then August 3rd is the Red Rose Rumble 2, which is our basically our WrestleMania. It's at the Clipper Magazine Baseball Stadium, home of the Lancaster Stormers. It is a beautiful, beautiful stadium, and it's our second year that we're doing this. So it's been again it's just been nonstop, and just consistently building and growing and blossoming. And I'm thankful that we're able to provide a platform for guys like Bro Keller, for folks, like our own students that have come out of the academy and have, gone on to make a name for themselves, not just here locally, but also on the independent scene throughout Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New York, New Jersey. So it's been awesome to have a platform that people can flourish on.
Yeah, that's super cool. Red Rose, of course, the Lancaster, PA, is the Red Rose City. I grew up in York County, right across the river there, which of course is
I'm kidding.
right. Of course, the White Rose City. Going
Right,
back
yeah.
to merry old England and the War of the Roses, and
You know what? So when I first moved out here, if you're familiar with The Simpsons, um, I have always related for whatever because I don't understand it. I'm new to the area, so by I'm relatively new, but I've always related to how Shelbyville doesn't like Springfield and Springfield doesn't like Shelbyville, and that's basically to me what York and Lancaster are like. Whatever that beef is, I don't know what it is,
yeah.
but whatever that thing they have between each other, it's like Shelbyville and Lancaster, Springfield.
I could see that. I could see that. Well, so I mean, when I was growing up in New York, and I think that's probably still the case. It's a much more of a kind of blue collar town. It's a little rougher around the edges. Lancaster's a little more like refined. It's a little more. I mean, there's a lot of farmland over in York County too, but like Lancaster's sort of over there in Amish country a little bit, and it's like very bucolic, very
Right. No, I mean, obviously York is right over the river,
yeah.
so we spend quite a bit of time over there. I mean, to me, it doesn't make a difference. It's the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Well, no, you should definitely talk shit about York because it's terrible. Like, I don't, there's a there's a reason I haven't lived there since I was like 18. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting the fuck. So, but anyway, all right. So, well, that's awesome. So yeah, check out Three Legacies. Wrestling.com. Check out some of their upcoming shows. I'm sure you'll have a good time. We rep for indie and local wrestling on here all the time because I think there's no better way to like get up close and personal with the action. The guys and girls will come out and talk to you between the matches, and you get a chance to kind of interact with the folks and see what it's all about.
Yeah, and especially because we do a lot of we cater a lot more so to family friendly events. So that's kind of what we tend to do is more for the entire family. You don't have to be a hardcore diehard wrestling fan to know to be able to like go in and not know what's happening because we're so interactive and we do a lot of stuff for the community. So and then we do bring in a lot of people from the surrounding areas. So it's family friendly. It's for every single person, all different ages. And what's super awesome, honestly, that we get a lot of people that have never been to a wrestling show before. So they come in a little skeptical, but by midway through the first match, they're a lot louder than some of the kids that are there, or somebody that they came with who's an avid wrestling fan. So they get super involved and super hyped. So I'm very proud of what we've built up so far at this point in time, and like I said, it's just something that's just gonna keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. And there's such a big boom mainstream too when it comes to professional wrestling, especially with everything that's going on. Like the mergers between WWE, TKO, and all that stuff. It's all the mainstream stuff that John Cena, The Rock, the Batista have done. So there's Jake Logan Paul, excuse me, like that, right? So it's mainstream, it's out there. So it's not taboo anymore. It's okay to be a wrestling fan, and it's fine. And this to me is like the closest thing to a live action movie in front of you. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and then we're able to play with your emotions that way, and live and in one take, and in front of you, and everybody gets to enjoy it.
Yeah, I am a big advocate as well for going to the live local wrestling scene. It's where, you also, that thing where you get to see tomorrow's stars today kind of thing too.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just it's totally different experience than going to any of the big company shows too, because you are right there close to the action. The cheapest seat is 4 rows from the ring, normally.
Right. Yeah.
So
Right.
and yeah, just also being able to see kids get involved and seeing their emotions go crazy for the good guy and for the bad guy. It just, it's a good time for all.
Yeah, and like I said, it's for everybody, anybody of all ages. It doesn't, it brings so many different people from so many different backgrounds, all for the love and enjoyment of pro wrestling, and for those 4 or 5 hours, or however long the event may be, or that time frame may be. You forget it's an escape for a lot of people just to kind of go in and just unwind and just forget about the outside world or reality for a second, and then just be submerged in the entertainment aspect of pro wrestling. But it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go all the way back to the beginning of so where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. Born and raised in LA. My parents are from Mexico, from Zamora, Michoacan, Mexico. I got to spend some time down in San Diego. I got to spend some time down in Mexico when I was a kid. But for the most part, I'm a West Coast boy, man. I miss it. I mean, proud of where I'm from and my heritage, and my sangre latina. I'm all for that. Um, and then I got signed to WWE back in 2010, and that's the first time I went to the East Coast long term, other than just to go for one time of wrestling and then come back. Um, so yeah, so I spent 24 years of my life basically on the West Coast, and then at the age of 24, I went to, when I got signed to WWE, I went to Florida, to Tampa, and then it's just been nonstop, just go 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 ever since, for the last 14 years basically.
Wow.
Um, but it's been a journey, man. It's one that's pretty cool, that very fortunately has taken me throughout, and I mean this literally, throughout, around the world, twice, around the world twice. And then that's something that's pretty cool, and it's all because of pro wrestling. Uh, so it's been a ride.
And so what actually pulled you into the wrestling business?
So I mean, I used to watch lucha libre when I was a kid.
Hmm.
So I got to, I mean, my very first lucha libre hero was Atlantis, who coincidentally I just tagged with this past weekend in
Wow.
MLW Chicago. So that was a whole dream come true, full circle type thing. So yeah, so I used to watch lucha libre on TV when I was a little kid, and after a while we just, we didn't have it later on, so I kind of went into like soccer and other sports, um, and then once I got into like the high school, after high school, I kind of started getting back into it because of some of my teammates and some of my friends. And then, yeah, they were watching WWE at the time. Well, yeah, WWE, because it was high school. So it was WWE at that point. So like The Rock and Stone Cold, the Hardy Boys, and all that stuff. And then the very first one that I saw, the first pay per view that I saw, was WrestleMania 17, and it was a TLC match, and it was when Edge and Christian, well, it was the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, and there was that one spot particular where Jeff Hardy was hanging from the titles, and
Hmm.
and Edge speared him off the ladder, and that was a specific moment that I was like, holy hell, this is awesome. I want to try this. So then we started doing backyard wrestling, and we kind of played around with that for a couple years, and then eventually, I went online and I found a local wrestling group. It was a backyard fed, but they had a ring. So they had their monthly shows, and I joined them, and it wasn't even a wrestling ring; it was a boxing ring. And boxing rings don't have that little spring. It's hard. It was an old beat up one too. But that's where we learned how to, quote unquote. Well, you can't. I know it's only gonna be audio, so you can't see my air commas. Um, but we learned how to, quote unquote, bump and run the ropes and all that stuff, and how to, quote unquote, wrestle, right? And then eventually from there we met a promoter by the name of Joe Medina, and then Joe had a promotion in Van Nuys, California, called New Tradition Lucha Libre, and he basically offered to train myself and another kid. Well, he didn't. It was his company, but then he had a guy who was a trainer, and then he became my very first trainer by the name of Latigo Blanco, and it was just straight Mexican lucha libre, and I loved it so much. Um, and yeah, I mean that was 2000. I started training I think 2005, and then I debuted in 2006, and I did the independence for 4 years throughout Mexico, throughout California, Nevada, Arizona. I got to go to Europe. I think it was like my second year. I went to Germany. Yeah, my second year I went to Germany, and I got to spend some time over there. And then it just I went to Chicago 2008, nine I think, 8 or 9. So I was here in Easton, Pennsylvania. And then 2010 came around. I for WrestleMania that year they were in Phoenix, Arizona, and then I went and I worked for Dragon Gate USA twice that weekend. Um, and then yeah, so we checked out WrestleMania that year in Arizona, and then the following year I was in the middle of the ring in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Georgia Dome, in front of 76,000, however many that was, for the opening match as Alberto challenged Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's
It's
crazy.
been a
What
ride since, man. All
what
this,
a head trip, man.
all this has been a ride, man. One year I was at WrestleMania as a spectator. The following, I'm in the middle of the ring announcing WrestleMania 27 at the Georgia Dome.
Yeah, I was just this afternoon watching your match with the super young Roman Reigns,
Oh,
Florida Championship, and you came
yeah,
out, you mouthed off to Howard Finkel. It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
boy,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
some balls to
Oh
get
yeah.
into Fink's
Oh
face.
man.
And
And I love Howard. Howard's such a nice person too, um, and yeah, he didn't know what I was saying when I said it in Spanish. I think I said something in Spanish. I don't remember. But then I felt so bad, even though like he knew I was gonna tell him what I was gonna tell him, but I felt bad afterwards. So I just apologized because I respect him. I mean, everybody respects the Fink. Everybody loves the Fink. So I remember I apologized to him. He's like, "Oh, it's okay, brother." Um, yeah,
man, that was a barnstormer of a match for sure.
that was fun. Yeah,
People
that
should
was that
hop
was
on
early
the
early
YouTube and find that.
Roman. Yeah, that was early Roman.
And so, where did the idea come from to be Alberto Del Rio's personal ring announcer? Like, how did that come to be?
So I don't know exactly where the idea came from, or I'm assuming it was a Vince thing, because Vince was very very hands on with Alberto. But I ended up doing a wrestling tryout. It was I want to say it was like August 10th, 2010, whatever the day after SummerSlam that year was. It was at the Staples Center. I did a wrestling tryout. I got offered a wrestling tryout by an amazing person by the name of Jesse Hernandez, who was the founder and owner of Empire Wrestling Federation in West Covina, California. I know, well, they moved. Riverside, San Bernardino, West Covina, they're all over the place. But EWF. So Jesse Hernandez was the one that offered me a tryout. And so I went, I did the tryout, and then afterwards, the guy who was in charge, he's like, "Hey man," well, not like that, but he's like, "Hey, if given the opportunity, would you be willing to relocate to Florida?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And he's like, "All right." So that was it. That was the end of the chat. And then later on, this lady, I know her name was Nicole. I don't remember her last name, but her name was Nicole, and she was like, "Hey, do you have a tuxedo?" I was like, "Yeah, sure," which I don't. They're like, "Have you ever done ring announcing before?" I was like, "Yeah, of course," which I never have. They're like, "Can you come tomorrow to
That's
Bakersfield and then for this thing?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And I was only scheduled for that Raw for that tryout. I was only scheduled for the tryout. So then I went to Bakersfield. Yeah, Bakersfield. I went to Bakersfield, California the next day. I did the little thing for Alberto's debut, and they were doing a double tape of SmackDown. They were doing a Tuesday and a Wednesday back then because they were about to go to SmackDown was about to go to Europe for the European tour, and this is also when they had, I think, the volcano. I think when they got stuck because of the volcano in Iceland or something. Anyways, so they were doing a double taping on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. I did the first day, which was just, I believe, yeah, it was just the presentation of Alberto. Um, and I think it was Malenko. Di Malenko had told me afterwards that it was that the Ricardo thing was only supposed to be just for the debut, but that Vince really liked it, so they just kind of kept adding me on. Um, so that they asked me to come back to Fresno, California, the next day on a Wednesday, and then after that, that's when they offered me a contract. Um, so yeah, so I did basically 3 days of extra work, and then they offered me the contract on the third day to be the ring announcer, and then I was on the road ever since.
Incredible. It's kind of like Steve Urkel on Family Matters, where he was only supposed to be like a one-off on the pilot or something, and then
Yeah, and then,
suddenly he's the main star of the show.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So, so no, Alberto had been in and out of various lucha promotions. Had you guys run across each other before hooking up?
Before, no, I didn't know at the time who he was just by looking at his face. I knew of the family, I knew of him, but I didn't know that was him. Obviously, growing up watching Lucha Libre, I was very familiar with all the lucha names. I just didn't know what they looked like without the mask. So I had a friend. I had a friend who, when I was given this role, he's a super wrestling fan, super wrestling fan. And then because of my job at the time, I couldn't watch Raw or SmackDown because it was long hours. I was at work. And also, this is back also when dial-up, so it wasn't like we had full internet on our phones, right? So I didn't if I didn't watch it and I didn't have if I didn't like tape record Raw or SmackDown, I didn't see it. This is before DVR. So we would go and pop in the cassette and then push record. So then I had asked my friend, I was like, hey man, who's this guy? Who's this Alberto del Rio guy? Just so that I know who it is. And he's like, oh, that's Dos Caras Jr. I was like, oh shit, no way. And then it all made sense because then I saw like the tattoo and I remembered some of the CMLL matches and I was like, that makes sense. So yeah, and it just went from there. But I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he looked like prior.
Yeah.
So we had never met. We met that day when he did his debut, and then we just became best friends.
His uncle is like Mil Mascaras or something.
His uncle Mil Mascaras. His dad is obviously Dos Caras.
Yeah.
His another uncle was Psicodélico, which is another famous wrestler throughout Mexico.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the whole family was royalty.
I don't know enough about Lucha Libre to be honest, but it's the culture and the history, especially that sort of familial stuff is just endlessly fascinating, in the way it's kind of like sort of kept in the family, and it's like that's super cool to me.
Like in Lucha Libre, the Lucha Libre is still considered like a sport. It's a tradition in Mexico. In Japan, it's a sport. In the U.S., it's starting to turn around again in a positive way. Certain times, and then stuff happens on in real life, and then it kind of takes a downswing on the perception that people have of wrestling because of stuff that happens on the news. But I mean, it's again. So there's a lot of wrestling fans out there. It's just they're just afraid to put it out there because they feel like it's taboo or they're gonna be looked at a different way. I was like, nah, man, it's entertainment. It's a fun time. You're gonna tell me that you think that those turtles that suddenly know kung fu that are 6 feet tall that they're real? Come on, man. It's that car is not turning into a robot and not coming from outer space, man.
Man, you're shattering all my illusions over here. So this is terrible. I'm learning all this for the first time.
Yeah, I remember when Alberto showed up on Lucha Underground. And I was kind of like, "Where's Ricardo? Where were you?" I was kind of heartbroken. It kind of felt like at that point I had associated you two together so much, and I was like, "Well,
yeah, no, I mean, because I left already before he did. I left July, and I think he left like 2 months later. I think. But at the time, I mean, I was just obviously when I first left WWE, like I was just busy. I was down in Puerto Rico quite a bit. I did Europe quite a bit, Australia. So I was constantly on the go, which was awesome. And then shortly thereafter, I went and I opened up a wrestling school in India. So when he came back to WWE, he had told me that he got that call. And he wanted to let me know, like, dude, I love you. You're my brother, so go do your thing. And I'm in India, like, I'm doing something pretty cool in India, so just go and do your thing. And then afterwards, when I came back to the States, I kept getting busy. Um, and then yeah, and then he ended up leaving. I think I forgot what he did afterwards. If he was with, I don't remember if it was Lucha Underground before that or after. But then he went back to AAA or Impact. I don't remember the timeline. But then yeah, he just kept getting busy too. And
Mm.
uh, yeah, it was yeah. No, and to this day, still like we talk every week. We literally talk. I just talked to him on Monday. So we still keep in touch. And yeah, so for the last 14 years, that's been my dude, man. We're boys.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Was it ever like frustrating with WWE though that like it felt like to me at least as a fan that they never really gave you like an honest shot as a wrestler, as an in-ring talent, but always just as like a valet and ring announcer? Like did you find that frustrating, or was it just like, hey, I'm on TV, I'm
I
getting
mean,
a
at certain
paycheck, this
times, yeah,
is
you feel frustrated, of course, and then you want the world, you want to become, the WWE champion. You want
yeah,
to be the main name. You want to be on the marquees. You want to be on the pay-per-views. You want to be on the chairs. You want to be on the cups. You want to be on the shirts. Of course, that's all of us. Um, but also at the same time, it's also understanding what our role and position is within the company and what our purpose is. As a wise man once said, "Know your role."
yeah,
So I mean, yeah, of course it was frustrating, and of course I wanted to be that main name. Um, but it was a battle, a constant battle with the ego, because the ego tells you that you want to be this big thing, and it's not to say that I couldn't be, um, but I know that at the time that was my role and that was my position, and then um, once I learned how to embrace it, I think I had an amazing time. But that little voice in the back of your head, that ego says you want more,
yeah,
you want to be that champion, you want to be, the main guy. Um, and sure, but then I never saw it as like, all right, so then why aren't I? What's holding me back? I never thought, I never stopped to think about that. I just thought of it like, dude, like I'm
yeah,
awesome in my head. In my head, I'm awesome. I'm this. I'm that. I can work circles around everybody. Um, I have this and this trait about me, but I never stopped to think about like, all right, so what's holding me back? I never bothered to even ask them like, why don't you guys give me an opportunity to do this? Um, but also throughout the whole time, the company did give me opportunities, and I just never thought of it that way. I never saw it. They let me wrestle down on the
hmm,
a lot. I was doing the dark matches. I was doing the house shows. I was doing the tours under the mask. I was doing NXT quite a bit. I was doing FCW, so they were letting me wrestle.
right,
I just had to prove myself, and I just never saw it that way. I just thought, well, I have to put over this guy again. I have to put on I'm putting on the mask to wrestle. This guy's coming up from NXT. I guess I'll put him over. I'm the jobber, right? But that's just what I kept telling myself. I never took it as they're giving me an opportunity. Uh, you know, give him something to be like, yeah, this guy, he's good. He can do this and this and this. Um, and also, I never saw it as like, well, they're trusting me enough to do this. Like, this multi-billion-dollar company is trusting me enough to take care of this guy who's coming back from rehab. That he got hurt, so he's rehabbing his knee or his back or whatever. Um, and they would put them with me to take care of him, and I never saw it as like they're trusting me enough to take care of this guy. I just saw it as like, I guess I'll put him over,
right,
right? And I never saw it that way. I also, at the same time, never saw it as a business. I saw it as a dream. And I think that was one of my biggest downsides or flaws throughout this
mm,
whole thing was I just saw it as the dream. I'm living my dream, but I'm not living my dream to fullest. I'm not the champion yet. I never saw it as a business. That at the time I was supposed to do business, and the business at the time called for me to help this guy, get better or help him because he might be the next star. As let's say in this case Roman, or in other cases, other guys that eventually got propelled to be that person, and we're there to help the business grow. Um, so I never saw it that way. So, but yeah, I got opportunities left and right. I just never saw it that way at the time until after hindsight.
yeah. Because I mean, you had a solid 4 years in WWE and of relevancy, and that's a really long run.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and also too, when you think about how from the get go, we were put from in a main event position from the get go. So 3 years straight,
Yeah.
basically, of just main event status. The last year we were just kind of floating around, but that was also us. But yeah, for 3 straight years, man, we were just main eventing matches. Uh, and I don't mean like we were always the main event, but we were in main event quality stuff for 3 years straight.
So you mentioned in India that was with Great Khali, right? You were running that school there.
Yeah, so that was the Great Khali's school, but I was the one that was running it. So I was running the school. I was doing the training. Yeah, that was an experience. Honestly, it was. Uh, I've been away from home, but
Mm-hmm.
I've never been that far away from home. Where like at the time calling my mom or my sister or my girlfriend at the time, just I had to wake up at like I had to stay up at 3 in the morning so I can talk to them here back in the States. Or it would just be through like voice notes on WhatsApp or whatever, or video messages. Um, so but overall, honestly, man, it was such a cool experience to travel to a different country, a completely different culture, of a completely different lifestyle, and then adapting to it and learning from it, and being engulfed by their beautiful culture, um, and then also I think one of the better parts too was that to see the hunger in all the students back then and there, because there was no other option. So it was the first time that they had an ability to wrestle or to learn pro wrestling properly, instead of just watching it on TV and then mimicking it, but to actually go through the process of learning how to. That was so beautiful to see, and then also seeing them appreciate the time that we were given in a ring. That to me was beautiful, and then it kind of it was one of those where it was so rewarding, because a lot of these families, they don't have a lot, so the very little they do have, the parents are spending it on the kids going to the wrestling school, or the wrestling shoes, or the tire, the bus to get to the school. So they appreciate it so much, and you can see the appreciation in them. Um, and I remember when I came back to the U.S., I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, we're spoiled over here, man. We're so spoiled. Um, and just but seeing that love and that passion for pro wrestling over there was so beautiful.
You had mentioned also that you had been in Cairo. What was happening in Cairo?
So during COVID time, unfortunately, there was nothing going on because obviously everything was shut down. I got a call from a an individual, Walid, from Cairo, and then he's like, in a nutshell, I'm just summarizing. Hey, we saw what you did in India. We were interested in seeing if you wanted to come down to Cairo and do the same. So, and like I said, I mean, number one, Egypt. So Cairo, number one. So yes. Two, I was like, yeah. I mean, there's nothing going on in anywhere because everything's shut down. So yes. And then three, it's Cairo. And I mean, honestly, I didn't have anything going on. So I was like, I've already said and just, I've already just gotten up and gone somewhere, not knowing anything about the culture, not knowing anybody. So F it, why not? See what happens, right? Um, but again, it was another thing too where I just went into it with an open mind, and it was such a beautiful experience, and I loved it so much. The again, I go back into just wanting to learn about the culture, and then seeing and then how people tell you, hey, when you go over to that side of the world, don't do this, don't do that. I was like, dude, once I got there, none of that was true. It was so beautiful, man. The culture, the people were gorgeous and beautiful, and then the love. Um, and yeah, dude, I had such an amazing time. And we tried to open up a wrestling school. We tried for close to a year, but it was just unfortunate, constant stop and start and stop because of COVID and this and that, and it was just an unfortunate situation. Um, there was nobody's fault. It was just the
Yeah.
way the stuff was going on in the world at the time. Um, and I was scheduled to go to Saudi Arabia to do the same over there. Just eventually that region got shut down because of COVID, and it didn't happen. Um, yeah, so there was all these plans. I was gonna go to Dubai, and I was basically gonna
Hmm.
live over there too, and just go back and forth between Cairo and Dubai. But again, there was just that time of that time frame where everything COVID just messed up a lot of stuff. Um, so unfortunately, it didn't. Cairo didn't pan out as we were planning, just because again, just what was going on in the world. I came back to the U.S. I spent time in L.A. for a little bit, and I went to San Antonio for a little bit, and then yeah, here I ended up. I ended up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, quite a journey. Would
Yeah.
you consider going back and trying that again
Oh,
in any of those countries if you had the opportunity?
absolutely. If I had the opportunity, absolutely. Could I go and stay long term? Probably not because I have this going on, and I'm kind of I'm stubborn, and I don't want to just leave it. And also, this is my baby. Um, yeah, I would love to go back to Egypt, and I know we've been talking about possibly doing something again this year, and but it's just one of those. We'll see what happens. Um, but I would love to. I would love to go back to India. I would love to go back to Australia. I would love to go back to to Cairo. Anywhere in Europe. Working on something for South Korea. And eventually my end goal would be to wrestle in Japan, which I never have. So that's my last little bit on my checklist is to wrestle in Japan. Um, but these are little things that little by little the universe is kind of just presenting opportunities to make these happen. It's just up to me to go and as Cody would say, finish the story.
Yeah. So, do you mind talking about your recovery? So my
Yeah, yeah,
brother-in-law
yeah.
runs a recovery center in Pennsylvania, and also is in recovery himself, and so um, I also think it's important for people to share these stories to help others find their way as well. Um, do you mind
Oh
discussing
yeah.
that some?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been very open about my alcohol and drug addiction. I've been very open about it. It's not something that I'm ashamed of now. Um, I unfortunately the lifestyle that we had was that quote unquote rock and roll lifestyle of just like I said from the very get go, they put us on main event situations, and we were stars from the beginning, right? And then again, that ego seeps in, and it tells us, "I want to be this, I want to be that. I am this, I am that. Um, I am this big superstar. I'm this guy who like a couple years ago nobody knew who I was, and all of a sudden I have people all up in my space, and then they want a picture with me, they want an autograph. Hey, that girl over there wants to meet up. Cool, awesome, of course. I was that shy kid in school. Um, so you get these things that just build up inflate your ego. Um, and at the time too, I mean, I grew up the way in a very poor situation. So all of a sudden we have money, um, and there was no regulation, and there was no way of anybody telling me, hey, don't do that, or hey, don't spend your money stupidly. Choose your circles wisely. Um, yeah, so that didn't help out too. And then as time went on too, especially after I left WWE, um, and I mentioned this a lot. I had time and I had money when I left WWE, and I didn't. I've always been a loner. Even to this day, I'm still prefer to be alone. But at the time, the way I would cope with loneliness was alcohol. Because after a while, I didn't want to be around people. I just wanted to be by myself and just chill and relax. And then the only way that I could relax at the time was just alcohol. And then the alcohol bred into the drugs, and then the drugs bred into alcohol, and then it just became a cycle. Um, so I went on multi year. I don't even know how many years, man. Multi-year bender, just constant getting drunk and then sobering up for like 2 weeks, and I'd be clean for like a month, and then I'd go back to like a 3 4 month bender, and I'd clean up for again for like 2 3 weeks, and then I'd go back on a bender, and it just became a cycle nonstop. Um, I gained a lot of weight. I would no show bookings because I was messed up. I would show up to bookings just reeking of booze, and burnt a lot of bridges. I would angrily, drunkenly say things I shouldn't have because I was just angry and I was bitter. So I lost a lot of relationships, and then I could always blame somebody else, but ultimately it was me. Nobody made me say those things but me. Nobody made me push people away but me. Nobody made me do anything. Nobody held the bottle to me but me. So yeah, I burned a lot of bridges easily within the industry, and then within just personal life. I lost a lot of relationships. I lost a potential, fiance. Well, I lost a fiance, and then it was life. It sucked, and I fell hard, on very hard times. Um, and eventually too, I ended up waking up in a hospital in San Antonio, and this is the only time I've woken up in a detox or in a detox part of the hospital with my phone. So I still have my phone, and I remember I went up on Twitter and I posted. I was like, hey, and I forget what I said exactly, but I was like, hey, I need help. I fucked up. I need help. Um, and then it just so happens that one of my closer friends and now my business partner, Christopher Dreisbach, who's the owner of Blueprints for Addiction Recovery, happened to see that tweet. And if you ever get a chance to talk to Chris, he's never on Twitter. Never on Twitter. For whatever reason, he saw my tweet. And he sends me a DM, and then he's like, hey man, if you're really serious about getting help, let's make this happen. And at the time I was like, man, fuck off. But also at the same time too, I had remembered that WWE had this program where if you needed help, they can help you out, especially if you've been an employee, of WWE. So they'll figure something out for you. They'll help you out somehow. So then I got a hold of. I had asked Drew McIntyre. I was like, hey man, do you happen to know the info for the rehab or whatever? Somebody to call. And then he gave me a number. Eventually, I talked to somebody, and they're like, yeah, we can figure something out for you. And then I was like, hey, I just talked to somebody, Christopher Dreisbach over in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Blueprints, and they happen to know who he was. So they're like, yeah, go ahead, talk to him, set it up, and we'll go from there. So then I hit back, I hit up Chris again. I was like, hey man, yeah, how do we make this happen? And then 2 days later, he flew me up. He flew me up to Pennsylvania, and then I've been here ever since. He picked me up at 2 a.m. from the Harrisburg International Airport. He got me checked into the house, the recovery house, or the rehab that I was gonna go to, and then yeah, I did my time in rehab. I did my time in the recovery house. I did the whole process, the meetings, all that stuff, and I'm very grateful for Chris. I'm very grateful that for whatever reason, whatever the universe told them to look at Twitter that day, that he saw it, and I'll always be very thankful and grateful for that. Because he's never on Twitter. Even now, he'll like a post that I posted like a month ago because he just saw it. So yeah, and it just happens that he happened to see it that night that I posted it. So how, why, I don't know. Higher being, higher power, universe, God, whatever you want to call it. That, and then also at the same time too, I think a big part of it too, because if it wasn't for other people talking about their addiction and their recovery, then I wouldn't have known that getting help was a thing. Growing up as in the Latino community, a man doesn't ask for help. We're not bitches. We're not pussies, right? We're fucking men. We don't share our emotions. We don't talk about our emotions. We don't do none of that shit. And there's still a piece of me that still holds on to that for different reasons. But yeah, we don't share our emotions. We don't. Yeah, that's yeah. But if it wasn't for people that were asking or they were putting out there that they went through a situation that was similar to mine, I wouldn't have known that getting help was a thing. I wouldn't have known that actually asking for help was a thing. Because to me, the idea of rehab was what you see in movies of that single lit room or that single light in a warehouse with all the chairs in a circle while they're having their donuts and their coffee. That to me, that's what rehab is to me for some reason. because that's what I see in movies. That's their AA. That's that. So that's all I thought. That's what it was. Um, that to me seems lame.
All
Um,
right.
right, and right again, this is the idea that we had back then because I didn't know anything about it. Um, and eventually, I got educated on what recovery is, and I got educated and smartened up on how we can get better, how it is okay to ask for help, and I still struggle with that. Um, but it is okay when you're down, when you're upset, when you're sad, when something's bothering you, when something, not to hold on to it. There's so much that I learned in the process of the last 2 years of getting sober. Because I'm grateful that I still have my 2 year chip, and I'm proud of that thing. And that 2 years going to turn into three, and then four, and then five, and six, and so on and so on and so on. But also too, at the same time, I got to learn that I'm able to recover out loud so that other people don't have to die in silence. Because if it wasn't for a lot of folks that were open about it, I probably still would have ended up, where I thought I was going to. I was suicidal. Uh, I was ready to call it a day, and I was ready to call it quits. And dude, and I tried. Don't get me wrong. Listen, I tried. I tried a few times, and I wussed out. You know, I'm glad I did. There was a time when I wrote letters and I left, and they're somewhere around. Where are they? I don't know, but they're somewhere in Orlando. But I wrote letters. I said my goodbyes, and I was gonna do it that night, and then just didn't happen. So those letters still exist somewhere. At least if my then housemates didn't throw them away, they're still out there somewhere. I don't know where. Um, but uh, but yeah, but I was ready, man. I was ready to just call it because I was done. I was tired. I was depressed, and I hated everything. I hated life, and I hated what I had become. But I didn't realize that I had become that. I just hated how I felt. Um, uh, for like so long, I was so against the idea of mental health because I didn't know what it was, and to me it was again. This is the mentality I had back then. To me, it was just a little
Mm-hmm.
bitch, right? That was the mentality I had because I didn't know anything about it. Um, because again, we just grew up in this whole like, no, get up, get up. Are you dying? No, then get up. Is your leg broken? No, get up. And again, to a certain degree, I still hold on to that for other reasons, but that's
Right.
that's all I had in my head back then. That's all I had. Um, so I didn't know anything about it. But again, now go into this whole process of better understanding my thought process changes and my opinions change. And I'm okay to admit that I was wrong back then, that I was wrong how I thought, that I didn't know anything back then. And the very little that I did know, I barely knew the surface of anything. So my constant thoughts change all the time because I'm constantly learning something new from different people that I talk to. And then I got to learn too that just by taking a quick little pause before I react, that's so crucial and pivotal versus me just
Mm-hmm.
instantly reacting. So taking a quick pause and analyzing what the possible outcomes can be so crucial to whatever the outcome is going to be. Um, but I'm proud of this. This all has been a learning process in the last 2 years, and then what I know now is very different than what I knew 6 months ago, and way different than what I knew a year ago, and way different than I knew 3 years ago. And what I'm gonna learn in the next year is gonna be very different than what I know now. At least that's my goal, to better understand this whole process because there's still a lot of things I don't get, and I'm okay to when I say that I don't have all the answers. But I want to know. I want to understand a lot better.
Well, that's great. We're glad that you got healthy, and glad that you're sticking around, and glad that you're kind of making a point to talk about it publicly. We saw a news item about that you were working on maybe a documentary about your
Yeah,
journey. Is that still something you're thinking about?
yeah, yeah. So that's still kind of on the go. It did kind of slow down a little bit just because there's been so much going on on the business aspect of things. Um, all for everybody that's involved in it. And it's a super awesome time right now, honestly, because like we're all growing and we're all grow together, and we can all carry on the same way. And if one of us succeeds, we take everybody else with us. And it's a cool little thing. Thankfully, at the time that we have this passion of this project, and also for the sake of trying to help other people too. And again, I go back to the same thing. Like the reason why I'm so into all of this now is because I didn't know anything about it back then, and if it wasn't until people were talking about it that I opened up my eyes and my ears and my soul and my mind and everything to what the options are. Um, I'm grateful that because of the process that or everything that we've done so far, there have been people that have reached out, and we've been able to help them. Either get them into treatment or just for that one single moment of that call when they're down, and they're feeling sad or whatever. That I'm able to just chat with them and then calm them down a little bit. And at least for today, they're fine. Tomorrow will be a different day, but tomorrow we'll figure it out. And then we just go day by day. But yeah, we're still working on that documentary, and it's been, yeah.
As I mentioned, my brother-in-law runs a recovery center, Pennsylvania Recovery in Phoenixville, and I think they just opened up in downtown Philadelphia as well. But I've witnessed him take the phone call of either the person or a loved one contacting him to get help, and those conversations are incredibly difficult and incredibly important, and just those folks are miracle workers in my opinion. Like
that phone call, and that phone call can save a life, man. It really can,
and as I say to him on each year of his sobriety, that I'm glad that he got the help, and I'm glad that I get to know him because of that.
And then too, so when people are constantly saying out about that people don't change, I dare them to look at somebody in long-term recovery, man. Like how they can change their life around. It's beautiful, and then have them see that joy and passion and love grow back in them, and that willingness to be open to the universe is amazing. Because I can tell you from personal experience, like man, I was shut down. I shut everything out. Anybody that, and I don't mean in a romantic way, I mean just anybody that tried to connect with me in any kind of way, especially during that time frame, I would shut them out immediately. I would never let anybody of any sort just get near me, unless they were offering me money or something of that sort, something that I needed, alcohol or drugs or money or whatever. Then I was like, yeah, come on, man, let's hang out. But other than that, like I didn't want anybody around me. I don't want to know anybody. I was okay just being by myself, and then just be like, all right, just leave me alone, and I don't care about anybody. And for the longest, I honestly felt that, and I truly believed that I didn't care anybody. But I'm grateful that through all this process of again just kind of accepting the idea of love, and then just passion, and being ambitious again, and just having that passion, that dream once again to like want to do things in life. It's very rewarding, and I'm grateful for that. But it's beautiful to see that in other people too, because you can see when that shifts and it changes, and it's beautiful.
Fantastic. Well, let's lighten it up here. But not that like that's a sad story. This is a celebration that you were able to get yourself together and get yourself clean, and you're able to be here, and you're able to run a successful lucha program in Lancaster, PA. And so let's just hit you with a couple quick hits that we normally ask our guests before we wrap up. So the first one's going to be like just your favorite wrestler of all time.
Eddie Guerrero.
Solid answer.
Easy.
Yeah, awesome answer. What a talented dude.
Do you have a dream opponent that you haven't been able to face or work with? Someone that you would love to work with?
If he was still alive, it would have been Eddie. Jeff Hardy in his younger years, because that's who I got into when I first started watching American wrestling, was Jeff Hardy. I got a chance to be in the ring with Chris Jericho, so that was a huge, awesome moment. I was Bret Hart's last match, TV match. So there's trivia for you. Yeah, I was Bret Hart's last TV match. It was myself and Alberto versus John Cena and Bret Hart.
Oh, shit.
I was his very last TV match. I'm sure he's not proud of that, but I am.
He was a little too pissed at that time.
Probably. Oh man, and I was also Dutch Mantel's very last match.
Look at you retiring the old.
Some good.
Retiring the previous generation here.
Yeah.
The Legend Killer. And you'd
For
be
the
like,
for a while, we were Edge's last match until he came back.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
We're the world's biggest Bret Hart marks over here, so we you just ascended to whole new levels of coolness.
Yeah. And our podcast used to just be mainly focused on WrestleManias. We used to be called All the WrestleManias until we decided recently that we were watching more than just WrestleMania, so we expanded our name. But do you have a favorite WrestleMania?
One that I was not a part of was definitely WrestleMania 17, because that to me is all the matches. Yeah, all the matches were just awesome. 16 is a great one too. 18, yeah. So 16, 17, 18, I think were my favorite. Like obviously that I wasn't a part of. My very favorite one to me was WrestleMania 27, because that was my first one. WrestleMania 29 was here at MetLife in New Jersey. So Alberto went in as a champ and then left as a champ. WrestleMania 30, I was the Spanish commentator throughout the whole show. So I was there when Brock beat Taker, and then when Daniel Bryan beat Triple H and Batista.
Wow.
Was Triple H? Yeah, or Randy.
Yeah.
We just watched that one not too long ago. Actually, we've been working our way through all the. Even though we're not called all the WrestleManias anymore, we're still working our way through all of them. We're up to 30. Yeah, I guess we're up to 30, huh? And so we got well, and we did a 40. We did previews for like the last 3. So we got like a good 6 or 7 yet to go before we get all the way through. But I guess you're the first person we've talked to who's actually been, on the card at a WrestleMania. So that's super cool. We've had other guests who, of course, been at various WrestleManias in different capacities, ringside or whatever, but not like a part of the show. So hey,
moving up in the world.
So I'm going to plug Three Legacies Wrestling for you one more time. This episode will come out after your next show, which is May 18th. That's Gift and a Curse. But then by the time you hear this, you could be looking forward to their Friday, July 14th show. That's Summer Night Lights, I believe.
Does that sound right? Was last year's, yeah.
That was last year's.
Yeah,
shit.
was last year's. No, the next one that we have coming up, it will be June 29th at the Lebanon Expo Center, and that's called Three Legacies Wrestling Come Alive. Okay. We're actually gonna have the NWA Junior Heavyweight Champ Joe Alonzo will be on the card. Nice. Fan favorites like Danny Moe, Facade, Bro Keller, J.S. Hawthorne, who's our champ. By the time this come out, then the announcement will already come out that we're working with a company in South Korea, Pro Wrestling Society. So that should be a lot of fun. So we're gonna be doing a lot of cross promotion with South Korea by the time that this comes out. So, yeah, it should be exciting. Check us out at 3legaceswrestling.com. Go to Facebook at 3Legacies Wrestling, and then follow us and subscribe. And then on our YouTube at 3Legacies Wrestling, if you tap in that little special members subscription for just 99 cents, man, you can get some extra perks and get the shows before they are public to everybody else for like 2-3 weeks.
Nice. I was just browsing. You got some cool merch on there, some cool T-shirts. So, check it out. 3legaceswrestling.com and support your local indie promotions. Support Jesus and his guys, and you'll have a great time. It's getting late, and we really, we know you have a full day, and so we really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us. It's been fascinating to hear about your career and your journey through the business, and so we thank you, and we wish you all the best. Any other parting thoughts for the fans?
Just thank you guys for supporting, and then just keep supporting your local wrestling indies, and we will see you guys at ringside.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And you all guys, thanks for listening. Again, we are the Wrestling Archives, WrestlingArchives.com. On Facebook, look for the Wrestling Archives Podcast. Instagram, X, TeePublic. Let's see. You can go to ko-fi.com/Wrestling Archives. You want to drop us the cost of a cup of coffee to help support the show. Keep us in the fanciest new microphone so we can sound good for all of our guests. But for now, I'm Tim, and I'm going to say good night for Rich, and we will see you next time, everybody.
If you are struggling with substance abuse and addiction, please call the National Drug Hotline at 844-289-0879. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please call 988. Someone will listen.